We're back here the whole 9 yards on a what's today? Friday morning, 10:39 a.m. Brandon, it's been what? I mean, it's been like over a week. How's the summer going? We're pretty much into the summer here, so
Yeah, it's been good so far. I mean, currently we moved into the house that we have for junior year, so that's where I'm at currently right now. But yeah, so far, I mean, since last time we talked, I think I've just been doing the same stuff. Obviously, I've been busy. I mean, I know that you did an episode by yourself. I've just been busy lately, but I'm here today, so and a lot of stuff has happened in the last 2 days, 3 days, so a lot to
yeah, I
talk about.
think the first news that's happened recently that we haven't talked about is happened last night. Pretty shocking news. Some of the most shocking stuff, at least like when you just initially just think about it and hear it. LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers eliminated from the first round of the playoffs. And who do they lose to? They lose to the Phoenix Suns, the 2 seed. It's nobody could have ever really predicted this coming off of last year's championship. You just think, obviously the Lakers win the finals. LeBron, re-cements himself as the greatest player in the world, and AD cements himself as an all-time power forward. And everything in the future is just building off that. And this year, AD is injured. LeBron gets injured. The Lakers fall down from about the 3 or 4 seed all the way down to the 7 seed. They end up winning the playoff play-in tournament, and they match up against the Phoenix Suns. Pretty much, I would say the vast majority of NBA fans would have predicted the Lakers to win this series. I don't know if I made an official prediction on it or if either of us did, but if I did, I would have picked the Lakers to win this series. I think most everybody would have. They had the two best players talent-wise in the series on the same team. Reigning champions as well. And the Suns come out and they win in six, whether it's, the Suns are a better team or it's injuries. I mean, props to the Suns, props to Chris Paul, props to Devin Booker for especially his game six. I want to say it was like 47 points last night, something like that. Insane performance. He was the best player on the court last night. Um, I don't know exactly where you want to start on that, but initial reactions from last night.
Yeah, I want to start with the Suns only because I think they deserve credit for winning this series. I think most people would probably want to talk only Lakers and probably I think they definitely have a right to talk about the Lakers, but I think the Suns came out and definitely won this series. Now you could say AD was injured and maybe LeBron's not totally healthy, which he probably isn't, but he's at least good enough to play. But also Chris Paul was not healthy the entire series from ever since game one. He's not been even close to the same player. So maybe you could say the impact of Chris Paul and AD is different. I think it's pretty similar for both teams. So I think that's something that subtracts from both teams, and you're still on an even playing field. And I think the Lakers are still a better team even at that point. So I give a lot of credit to the Suns. Booker, I mean, like you said, he had 47 last night. When that game, I made sure to watch that game last night, and you could just tell. I mean, he scored 22 in the first quarter, but that game was over in the first quarter. I know the Lakers cut it down to 10 late in the game. I think like early fourth quarter, but that game was over in the first quarter. Lakers were lifeless. Obviously, AD went out again with the injury. He clearly just wasn't healthy enough to play. I don't know really why he was out there playing because I mean, ever since the opening tip from last night, he just was not healthy. He was showing it the entire first quarter, but I was like you going to the series. I definitely the Lakers winning, probably in 6 games, honestly. But and they were up 2-1, so it's not like they were down the entire series. They were up 2-1 after losing the first game, and it did look like they were going to win the series, especially game four at third place. Have a chance to go up 3-1. If they're up 3-1, the series is over. But again, the Suns, you have to give them a lot of credit. They won 3 straight games against the Lakers, even with a injured AD. You still have LeBron. You still have a lot of other players on that Lakers team who make an impact. And I don't know if it was just from last year. Maybe there was some they were just exhausted from last year, which you can definitely use as an excuse because of how far they went last year. The injuries to LeBron and AD. Maybe this team just wasn't as built and as good as we thought it was. I don't know, but again, I give a lot of credit to the Suns, and they definitely deserve to win the series.
Yeah, I just as far as if let's just say the Suns go to the finals, who do you think matches up better against? We'll just say the Nets because they're probably the favorites right now. I mean, who matches better against the Nets, the Suns or the Lakers? To me, it's the Lakers, and I mean, I know the Lakers is lost, but if you're talking who do I think has a better chance to win the championship? It's the Lakers, even though they just lost the series. I know the Suns kind of just proved everybody in the whole world wrong, winning in 6 against the Lakers, but I don't know that they have the star power to compete with the Nets or to even compete with. I mean, if the Clippers were to make the conference finals, I don't. I mean, maybe they do, but I'll say the Nets at least, and probably the Bucks and probably the Sixers, but not nearly to the same extent. They just, is Booker going to be able to go head to head with a, a Harden, a Durant, a Kyrie, and obviously you have Paul there, but Paul's not that type of just go get a bucket type of score. He's just not that. So if you don't have that type of talent to even compete with the Nets, or even to really compete with like, teams that aren't the Nets in the East, it's going to be tough for them to make to win the finals. I don't know if right now they're your favorite to make the finals out of the West or not, but
Well, I guess we still have that one series left with the Clippers and Mavs that's going to be happening tonight. Mavs are up 3-2, so I think there's still some possibility the Clippers could win, and I think the Clippers do win. They'd probably be my favorite, but again, they've been so inconsistent. It's kind of hard to even choose between these last 4 teams that will be in the West, but I do think it's guaranteed that a team from the East is going to win the NBA Finals. I just think with no Lakers. Obviously, you have the Jazz, but the Jazz they're not a finals team. They're a first round, second round team that is most likely whoever they play the Mavs or the Clippers. I think they're probably going to lose that series unless they play the Mavs and Luka isn't healthy. Then they could win that series. But if Luka's 100% healthy or at least 90% healthy, I think the Mavs win that series, honestly. So I just see the winner of the finals this year coming out of the East, whether it's the Bucks, Nets, or Sixers. Obviously, it can only be two of those. It can obviously only be one of those teams. I'm saying the Bucks or the Nets is going to get eliminated this round. So we'll see who matches up against the Sixers. Again, most likely in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I don't see a team out of the West winning the finals, no matter who they play, honestly.
this is the first time I want to realistically and seriously ask and ponder this question, because throughout my time as an NBA fan, being born in 2001, this is all we've known. And the question is LeBron James right now still the best player in the NBA? There were plenty of years, or maybe you can argue somebody else, but realistically, I think the answer is pretty much always LeBron, and he proved it probably right with the 2019, 2020 finals win. I think there was years where people might have argued KD or might have argued, Kawhi on that finals run, but I think LeBron was pretty much still the answer. But I think this is the first year where you can realistically ask yourself, is LeBron the best player in the NBA? So I'll ask you that.
I think he still is. If he's 100% healthy, I think he still is. But again, I think he's going to be 36 years old or 37 years old for the start of next season. And, he did say that ankle injury he's never going to be 100% again. But we'll see what exactly that means. Now, maybe this helps coming out early in the playoffs. He's not going to have a deep finals run again, so he is going to have more time to heal. But again, he's going to be 36, 37 years old for a guy who's basically a 40-year-old because of all the playoff games that he's played. It's basically added like 3 to 4 seasons on his career. So I will say for this season, I think when he was healthy, I think he was. But I think for next season, I think that definitely could change. Whether it's Embiid, if he's healthy, Jokic, who is going to be the MVP this year, and possibly even Luka. I think Luka probably is going to be the best player in the NBA. But if he's a deep playoff run this year, I think he definitely could potentially be the best player in the league. I know that may be saying a lot because he hasn't done much and he's still very young, but I think everyone clearly knows that he most likely will be the best player in the NBA in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, to me, it's so hard for me to seriously think that somebody else is a better basketball player right now than LeBron. I don't know if it's because LeBron just athletically and, staturally is stature. If he's, if he's just so massive and he's been so good. That's all I've known. I don't know why, but it's so tough for me to think that, KD is better. I don't know who I would necessarily have as second best player in the NBA right now. It would probably be Kevin Durant. But if KD can't play a full regular season and needs, championship winning talent next to him to be, great in the way he is, and I don't know if he is the second best player in the NBA, because I don't think KD could do what Luka's doing right now. I don't know that I don't know that I could say that. If they switch teams, would the Mavs be the 5 seed or better? And would he be able to carry a team to a 7-game series win? I'm not necessarily too sure that he could do that, just because He's not a 72/82 game per year guy. He's not necessarily a leader. He hasn't really proven. I mean, I guess you could say go back to the OKC days, but he hasn't proven that without a number two that he could really do all that much. And I don't know that, not that he's not great, because again, he's probably still the second best player in the league, but
Well, I'll say if he was on the Mavs right now, I don't think he could, only because he's not a ball handler and Luka is. So I think that's the difference, honestly. If Dallas had a better point guard, they have Jalen Brunson right now, but Luka's obviously their point guard and he's having the ball, however percentage of the time. So I think that's honestly the biggest difference. But if the Mavs had a better point guard and then you put KD on that team, not saying like a Kyrie, I'm just saying a guy who's a better ball handler and a guy who's more consistent at the point guard position, then I think they probably could be. But the way it's constructed right now, I don't think they could be. But I don't really blame that on Durant. I just blame that on him not being a true ball handler like Luka is.
yeah. And there's so many questions to really answer with the series. So I'm sorry for kind of bouncing around here, but looking at the Lakers as a team, where do they go from here? There's so many options they could realistically go with. Do they run it back again, which I think is the popular answer, or do they try to blow it up? Do they try to trade AD? Do they try to say, I don't know what you would do with LeBron. You're keeping LeBron realistically, but do you try to get LeBron different second guy? What do you do with Schroeder? What do you do with your role players like your Harrells of the world who basically didn't play in the playoffs? All these types of guys that you brought in and thought were going to do better. Maybe they didn't do as well. Maybe they just weren't good in general. Where do you go from here? What improvements does this Lakers team need to make to compete against the Suns and other teams for next year? Because right now, I mean, other than AD and LeBron, they don't have much. And, I don't know that Shooter's coming back. Doesn't seem like he's going to be able to come back unless they give him a lot of money, at least, for a guy like him. So
Yeah, and I think I saw something that said he did want to come back, but I don't know if the Lakers exactly want him back because of the money. He's probably going to want some. I don't know what the actual money would be, but I don't think the Lakers would pay that. Obviously, number one is having LeBron and AD healthy. If they're both 100% healthy, or at least 90% healthy, they are the two best players on one team together. I would say in the NBA, there's no duo that's better than them. I guess you could maybe say Durant, Harden, but you really can't say that because it's really LeBron and AD when they're healthy. But I don't know exactly what they need. They do have outside shooting. They play really good defense. I mean, they were number one defensive rating this year, even with AD and LeBron missing 30 games each. You obviously Drummond's not going to be back. You have to fill that center position somehow. I don't know if it's a stretch five like a Gasol, but obviously not the age that Gasol is, but a player like him, or if you try to go with McGee and Howard that you had last year. I don't know which way they're going to go, but they clearly have to figure out that center position. Their bench, I mean, Harrell, that was a terrible signing, and I think it's just shown that he really can't play in the playoff minutes because of matchups, and he's terrible defensively and offensively. He doesn't, he just doesn't do on this specific team. He doesn't fit what they do. But they're gonna have to figure that out. Kuzma, he could easily be he's an easy trade candidate right now. I don't know who they trade him for, but you'd think it would be a scorer off the bench who actually can create their own shot and can play make for others. But yeah, they definitely have a lot of questions to answer. But again, number one is definitely getting LeBron and AD completely healthy for next season because I think they still have next season, and then we'll see about the season after. Because I think LeBron, he's definitely going to dip a little bit this upcoming season, and then we'll see about the next season.
yeah, I think that's what I would do too. I think you need to take a look at what your options are in free agency, build your roster, at least for next year, around AD and LeBron. The Lakers, the past few years have, not been afraid to do 1-year deals. I mean, I couldn't even think about all the 1-year deals and 2-year deals that they've signed. If they can do something like that again and just kind of bring guys on 1 and 2-year deals and build up for these next 2 years with this current, LeBron AD, go for it. After that, it's going to be interesting because you're going to have to decide, do you want to give the reins to AD and AD is your number one? Or are you potentially shipping AD out or letting AD walk in some way? Or, that's going to be interesting because LeBron's not going to be in the NBA forever, and AD is certainly going to outlast LeBron in the NBA. Now the question is AD? Do the Lakers believe AD can be a number one? Because I don't know that I believe he could. I think he's
I
probably.
don't think he could either.
Why do you not think why don't you think he can be?
Well, I mean, you could just see it. I think you'd probably agree with me that I mean, we saw it in New Orleans. I know that team wasn't that good, but they had some decent teams, and he was only able to get them to the playoffs, I think, 2 times, maybe 3 times, and they only won one series when they swept the Blazers, but then they got swept the next round. So he's not been able to lead a team on his own. Even when he gets to LeBron, he can shine in the spotlight when it's not on him, which I think that is a clear case of being a number two. And if you see a lot of guys when they're on their own team, they can't do it themselves. When they go with the guy who's better than them, then they're a lot better. So I think that's just him. I think that's who he's going to be. So when LeBron does retire or when he does leave, and he said he wants to play with Bronny, so I don't know if he actually will do that or not. But let's say when it's Anthony Davis's own team, I will be interested to see what they do because I don't think he's good enough to lead a team by himself. I just don't. Could they make the playoffs for sure, but can they win a finals? Definitely not.
Yeah, I'd probably be in agreement. I just attitude wise, I don't think he's a leader. And I think on most NBA teams at this point, it's really tough to be the leader of a team and be the guy without being the most talented. I mean, we've seen it work sometimes. Like I guess the Golden State Warriors might be that best example where KD was probably the most talented, but that team was just so talented that year. There's no way they're not. I just think the dynamic there of the most talented guy not being the leader is just really tough because locker room problems just seem to arise, and I'm not sure how or why I'm not in an NBA locker room ever, but that just kind of happens. It's interesting. This is the first, I guess, first round that LeBron has lost in the first round. Technically, a couple of years ago, he didn't make the playoffs, but this is what I'm used to is the playoffs without LeBron. I'm still just not used to it at all. I'm really not. Looking at the other matchups, well, I guess looking at the conference semifinals, we have Phoenix and Denver in a series. We've got Utah versus the winner of Los Angeles and Dallas. On the East, we have Philly and Atlanta and Milwaukee, Brooklyn. I actually don't think I don't know that we ever put down official predictions for the first round of this NBA playoffs. So I kind of want to do it for the second round. Um, I guess we'll start with Denver and Phoenix since we're still kind of talking about Phoenix. What's your prediction on how the series plays out?
Well, first, I guess let's just talk a little bit about Nuggets Blazers, just a little bit. It was definitely an even series, but the Nuggets definitely outplayed them. I mean, the Blazers' biggest, their biggest fault in the regular season was their defense, and that showed in the playoffs. And the Nuggets defense definitely improved a little bit in the playoffs, which if as long as they can keep improving, I definitely like their chances against the Suns. But that was a series where Jokic showed why he was the MVP. I mean, I think every single game except for one, he had 30 plus, and he was very efficient. He was controlling the game, making plays for others. I think his assist numbers were down, but he was obviously getting double teamed. He was making plays for others, which that's obviously what he does all the time. So definitely give credit to the Nuggets for that series. And the Blazers, they have to figure a lot of stuff out for this next season. We could probably get into that when we talk about the offseason and everything, but we'll see about their coach. We'll see about Lillard. We'll see about moves they make on the roster. But speaking Nuggets, Suns, this is a very even series. I'll be interested to see if they double Jokic or they leave Ayton to guard him. I don't think Ayton's definitely been better defensively, but Jokic is a different kind of player. He can beat you from the perimeter. He can bring the ball up. He can obviously beat you down in the post. So I'll be interested to see their defensive scheme against them. The others have played a lot better for the Nuggets. Monte Morris had 28 in Game 5 and 22 in Game 6 last night. Gordon's been playing really well. They've been shooting the ball really well. Austin Rivers has been shooting really well. So Michael Porter Jr. had 22 points in the first quarter last night, like Devin Booker. They basically had the same stat line, honestly. But this series, if Jokic could dominate like he was in the first round, I think I'm going to go Nuggets in 6. So that's probably going to be my prediction, Nuggets in 6.
Really, that's surprising to me. Quickly on Denver, Portland, I guess. Yeah, I think I think Denver is just the better team. I think Jokic is probably the best player in that series, although I don't think Dame's too far behind. But Denver right now has the better overall roster. I think he's better than probably anything on the Blazers right now. At least offensively, he is. The Blazers, yeah, you're right. We can talk about it later in the offseason, but head coach Stott's probably gone. I think at least. I just think they've been on a plateau for too long. So yeah, but I think I'd probably go Phoenix in the series. I think I go Phoenix, and I just think that I think even though Phoenix hasn't been in the playoffs, I mean, beating the Lakers just gives them a little bit of credibility to me. And it gives, I still kind of get this grit and grind playoff vibe from the Suns that I typically wouldn't get from a team that hasn't been in the playoffs in 10 years or whatever it is. I like them a little bit more. I think Jokic he's probably the best player in the series. I don't even he definitely is the best player in the series, but I think 2 and 3 are Booker and Paul. I think Monty Williams has had a great year. Maybe the Suns are just maybe they're out of gas. Maybe this is what their destiny was this year was to compete, beat the Lakers, and then kind of fall off in the conference semis. So maybe Denver takes the series. I don't know exactly what their game plan is going to be for Jokic as well. Ayton is going to have to play huge defensively. His offensive numbers are going to take a hit, but he's not going to be able to dominate it nearly as much as he did early on in that Lakers Suns series. He's just not going to. If you're going to have to dedicate all that defensive energy to Jokic, it should just be in the game plan to just not expect more than 15 points from him a game, and even then, he might not even get 15 a game. We'll see. He should be trying his best to do that. If he can not stop Jokic, but if you can limit him more so than he was in the Portland series, I think they win. It's going to be close. Games are going to come down to the wire. Do I love Jokic as a closer? I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe people do, maybe people don't. I think the Phoenix Suns, I kind of like them more in the stretch, down the stretch. Maybe you don't. I don't know. I mean, Jokic is, again, he's the best player in that series, so I think it's easily arguable the other way around, but I like Booker late. I just think that guard that can close the game is probably more convenient than a center being able to close the game. That's my opinion. I like Phoenix, but I think it'll be close. I'll take Phoenix. I'll take Phoenix in 7. I think it's a back and forth series. I think we see a lot of, Nick Wright saying the series is over when a team wins 2 games in a row. We're going to see a lot of that, but I think it'll come down to the wire. And I think Phoenix comes out on top. It's just beating the Lakers means a lot to me. And I think I'm also rooting for this Phoenix team. Not a big Chris Paul fan, but I like Devin Booker. And yeah, I think they're just a slept on team. So
I think I would probably change my pick if Chris Paul was totally healthy. But him clearly being limited, I don't think it mattered as much in the Lakers series because of the injuries to AD and then possibly even LeBron. So I don't think it mattered that much there. But in this series, you're playing a fully healthy Nuggets team. And the
well,
Nuggets
except
have,
for Murray, but yeah.
well, yeah, but I mean, we obviously knew that. It's
Yeah.
not like he's playing injured or anything like that. But I think the Nuggets have a lot of guys to throw at Devin Booker. They just have a lot of athletic wings who can move their feet laterally. So I think they'll make it tough on Booker. I think he'll still get his 30 points, 25 to 30 points, but I think it'll just be a tougher 25 to 30 points. And with Paul not being totally healthy, unless he proves it this series, that he could at least look somewhat like the old Chris Paul, I just like the Nuggets' favor. I think Jokic can dominate. Eaton, he has to play like spectacular defensively. Because again, it's not going to stop him. He just has to limit him. But even then, I think Jokic is just so good. So that's why I like Denver in 6. But if Paul was healthy, I'd probably go Phoenix. I don't know if I'd go 6, but I'd probably go 7, honestly. But again, Paul's not healthy, so it's just tough to take him because of that.
Yeah, I don't know the severity of Paul's injury status. I mean, it looked like he was back, 100%. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. I don't know,
I
but
don't think he is. I mean, he was 4-12 last night. I think he averaged 12 points per game in the Lakers series. I don't think he is.
I think there's a chance he comes back healthy. I don't know. Their first game's not for another 3 days. Maybe he's not 100, but I'd be surprised if he was less than 85%. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Moving on to the other Western Conference. Actually, I guess we'll save that. I guess we'll save the other Western Conference series since it's
Yeah.
not we could talk Mavericks Clippers. We haven't really gotten too much in depth, but I mean, I would have taken the Clippers to win the series. I probably would have taken it in 6 like it happened last year. Not necessarily the same, stories, but I didn't think Luka was going to be the best player in the series, and I'm a Luka guy. I'm definitely a big Luka guy, but I thought Kawhi would be the best player in the series. There's been times where he looked like he was. I think you would look at games 3 and 4 and say, yeah, I mean, there's a solid chance Kawhi was the best player in those games. But overall in the series, he just hasn't been. He's been super inconsistent along with this Clippers team. Luka's been the best player. He's played great in basically all 5 games. I mean, he's so good. He really is. It's just people call him, baby Larry Bird or whatever, but he's phenomenal. He was a guy that we both had him as MVP candidates going into this year. I think next year he's probably my pick. Who knows? Who sees what, who knows what happens, but he'll at least be in contention for my pick, which would make him like the second youngest MVP ever. Yeah, I would have picked the Clippers in 6. I would have thought that having two basically superstars and Kawhi, who's a top 5 player in the NBA probably, and George is a top 20-ish. There was times when you had him in your top 10 probably. I thought that would have just been enough outright, and I thought that the Clippers surrounding cast was good enough. I thought Morris would be able to continue at least somewhat his efficiency. You would have thought that, Pat Bev would, may not be great, but he's all right. Reggie Jackson would be good enough. No, not true. Not true this series. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference, honestly, is the Clippers were the best 3-point shooting and free throw shooting team in the regular season, and in the playoffs, they have really struggled. At least from 3, I don't exactly know what their free throw percentages are, but from 3, they really struggled. And the Mavs, who I think they were 27th in 3-point percentage. They were at least in the 20s somewhere. They've been amazing from 3 this entire series. Luka's been amazing from 3. I think he's only a 32% 3-point shooter in the regular season. And basically for his career, he's low 30s. In this series, he's been amazing. Obviously, he has that neck injury, but they said he's been better. He was obviously really good in Game 5. I think he had 42, 14, and 8. And in the games where he's dominated, he's completely dominated. And then in Games 3 and 4, where he was clearly injured, I mean, you could just tell. He wasn't as dominant, and the Clippers, ran away with those 2 games. So this will be a very interesting game. No team has won at home yet. All the wins have come on the road. So the Mavs being at home, we'll see if that streak continues. Because if it does, then we'll have a Game 7. But for this game, I want to put my trust into Kawhi because I know that Kawhi is the best player in the series, but right now he's just not playing like it. But I think we all know that he is the best player in the series, especially in the playoffs, because he's shown it, time and time again. And Luka, this is only his second playoff appearance, so I want to say the Clippers because I want to put my trust into Kawhi, but he was terrible in Game 5. I don't know exactly what was going on, but he was awful. So I just don't know if I can. So I'd probably say the Mavs win. I think it'll be a really close game. I think it definitely will come down to the wire, but I think I'm going to go with the Mavs. I think Luka's going to have a really big performance again. I don't know if it's 40, 14, and 8 again, but it's going to be a huge performance, I think.
I'm going to go with the Clippers tonight. I think Kawhi and George show up. They pretty much showed up Game 5. I just think that they didn't have anything around them, really. I think they played well enough to win that game. I take them tonight. In Game 6. I think we go back to Los Angeles and Staples Center for Game 7. And I think the Clippers probably win that game too. That's my pick. The Dallas Mavericks could prove me wrong, and they end up winning. I wouldn't be too surprised, but I think Kawhi is the best player in this series, and I think George is the 3rd best player in the series, and I think there's a pretty sizable gap down to the 4th. I don't even know who your 4th best player in the series would be. I mean, would it be Kristaps? It's such a tough. That's like,
yeah, I mean, on talent, I guess, but
he just isn't. Really. He's not. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's tough. That should theoretically win them the series. It's too tough for me to not pick them. But also the Clippers are so inconsistent. So it's like, can I pick them at all? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they win these last 2 games. I think they pull it out. If they don't win this, that's bad. They need, as a franchise, they need to win this. They dodged the Lakers, who lose in 6 to the Phoenix Suns. They could have played Portland, who lost in 6, and now they're going to potentially lose to the Mavericks in 6.
Yeah.
That's horrible. You'd have to look at Kawhi. Is he leaving? Kawhi might be leaving. Kawhi might say, hey, I'm going to New York, who was a 4 seed last year, and they're looking super promising, even though that's basically what the Clippers were in the West. They were the Knicks of the West almost. Maybe not the 4 seed. They were the 8 seed, but I mean, I think the 4 seed in the East is about the same as the 8 seed in the West. At least those years they probably were. Yeah, as a franchise, they need to win this. It can't be not mentioned. It's just, if they lose this, they're done. They're toast. They're really toast. And I think they pull through.
We'll see if Kawhi does leave. If let's say they lose tonight, or whether they lose Game 7, whatever. I don't know if Kawhi would leave. I mean, obviously he's going to opt out of the contract anyways, because he's going to want to sign a new contract if he does re-sign or if he does leave. But I will be surprised if he does leave, only because it seems like he chose LA, and I know they haven't won, but for a guy like him, he's a different kind of guy. It does seem like he'd want to be in LA. But if he does leave, I mean, there's going to be a lot of teams that would want him. We'd obviously get more into that if he does opt out, if they do lose. Obviously, the Knicks would be one of the top candidates, I would assume. Obviously, with the money that they have, the need that they have, the team they had this past year, they're obviously on the rise. Obviously, from being one of the worst teams the last 10 years. So that will be a very big storyline if it does happen for the offseason. But right now, he has to have two big performances. Like I said, I want to put my trust into him, but he's been inconsistent. George's been inconsistent. They haven't played like the players that they are so far in the series. So I just have to go with the Mavs. But it will be a very close game. But you have Clippers, I have Mavs. We'll see what happens. I guess we can't technically talk the second round yet, but it'll be Jazz versus whoever. I think we'd probably go, if it's Mavs or Clippers, I think we'd probably go with Mavs or Clippers in that series. But unless you have anything else to say about that, we can move to the Eastern Conference semifinals.
Yeah, we can move.
I wanted to start with the Sixers and Hawks because the Bucks and Nets I think is obviously the better series, so I kind of want to save that for last. But just a little bit on the first round. I mean, obviously Embiid is injured; he's a torn meniscus, or at least a partially torn meniscus from that Wizards series. They said it's day to day, which obviously means it probably is week to week. But if he needs to come back, he'll come back and play. So we'll see if he's available for Game 1. But he's obviously the biggest reason. He's the biggest player in this series, even with the way Trae Young has played. Obviously, Embiid's the best player in the series. If he's not there, at least for the first game or two, I think the Hawks can definitely take one off the Sixers. The Sixers without Embiid are still a good team, but they're not the number one seed in the East like they were with Embiid. Simmons just isn't the offensive player. You need Tobias Harris to give you like 25 to 30 on very efficient shooting. You need your three-point shooting to be amazing, which is obviously a lot to ask for, even with the shooters that they have. So I think it's all on Embiid. If he's healthy, the Sixers win this series, probably in 6 games, honestly. I think the Hawks can definitely put up a fight because of their offensive capabilities, but the Sixers defense is just relentless. They have so many deflections, tip balls, steals, blocks, just the way they move defensively. I just think they'll give the Hawks a really tough series, and we'll see. I don't know who they'd put on Trae Young. I mean, would you put Matisse Thybulle? Would you put Ben Simmons on him? I don't know who you'd put on him, but they're gonna figure that out. And I think Trae Young will have a much tougher time this series than he did in round 1 against the Knicks.
Well, first, I think with or without Embiid, the Sixers are the better team in this series. I still think they are, even without Embiid. If Embiid for some reason couldn't play this whole series, I still take the Sixers in 6 or 7. I just think they're more talented. They have a better chemistry. Doc Rivers, well, he may not be the best coach in the league. He's a consistent, solid coach. Maybe Nate McMillan is too. You could say that as well. But I think Doc Rivers is probably the more established, better head coach. I think they're a better team without Embiid. Still, and even with them, when Embiid plays, they're definitely the better team. I think they win in 5 or 6. I just don't think the Hawks really have what it takes. Capella is a defensive player of the year candidate, but nobody stops Embiid. It's just Embiid's really good. And even if Embiid's not playing, I still think you have talent. Defensively, you probably go with Simmons on Young. And when Thybulle's playing, you slap Thybulle on Young to give Simmons a breather and let him kind of concentrate more offensively and playmaking and getting to the hoop. But I think Simmons is probably still your best all-around defensive player. And you just can't play Thybulle 40 minutes a game or anything really close to it. He's just not good offensively. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Simmons, the biggest factor, if Embiid's not going to play, let's say the first couple of games, or even if Embiid does play, Simmons is going to have to be more aggressive at the hoop anyways. He can't be passive. He has to be attacking the basket. They don't really have someone. I mean, I guess they have DeAndre Hunter, who can at least is athletic enough to like kind of guard him, but I still think Simmons can abuse that matchup if he just is aggressive and going to the hoop, which he should be. I mean, that's the way he can dominate. No one can really stop him when he's going downhill. Obviously, he's not a great free throw shooter, but I take Simmons going to the free throw line like 15 to 20 times a game and him making 10 of them because he's unstoppable going to the hoop. Is you either have to foul him or he's really good, in close range situations. So Again, I think we both like Sixers. You said 5 or 6. I said 6 games. And obviously we'll see with Embiid, but I think this will be a pretty easy series for them. But moving on to Bucks Nets, clearly the best series of the second round. Out of all the games, no matter what Mavs Clippers ends up, this would be the best series. It's Bucks Nets, Giannis versus Durant, Harden, Kyrie. I like the Nets. I mean, obviously they're my finals. I picked them to win the finals at the beginning of the season. Then they got Harden. They were still my team going to the playoffs. They were still my team. So I have to go with the Nets anyways. But even so, I still like them. The Bucks have definitely shown something. Obviously they swept the Heat. Definitely a different Heat team than last year, but the Bucks played really well in that series. And I think this will be a really tough series. I think it'll most likely go 7 games. I just think that there will be some games where the Nets defense really shows. But I just think that offensive that they have with Harden, Durant, and Kyrie is just so overwhelming. No matter if you Drew Holiday and Giannis to guard at least 2 of them, then you have Harden or you have Kyrie or you have Durant who still can do something offensively. So I just think it's gonna be a tough series for the Bucks to stop them on the offensive end. So I'd like Nets in 7.
Yeah, it's so tough for me because my head tells me to kind of go with the Nets just because they're offensively so good. But if the Nets are to win this series, I think they probably win the finals. And I don't want that to happen at all. I'm gonna be rooting for the Bucks this series. Do I pick the Bucks to win? I don't know. I just think it's going to be really tough. Like you said, they have Giannis, but after that it's even if you want to say Giannis is the best player in the series for the point of this exercise, I'll go Giannis is the best. Durant, Harden, Kyrie is 2, 3, 4. If not, you have Giannis at second or third best, and then you have one of the best. You only have one player out of the best 5, no matter what, basically, out of the best 4, no matter what.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough series. It's going to be tough. Giannis is going to have to be, he's going to have the best series of his life, the best 7 series, whether it be a stretch of 7 games in the regular season or a stretch of 7 games in the playoffs or whatever. He's going to have to play the best basketball of his life, probably to win the series, unless, one of the big 3 or a couple of the big 3 play horrible on the Nets side. But I think the Nets are probably good enough defensively. I haven't said that all year, but again, it's just really tough. They only have to be middle of the pack really to secure a series win. But Giannis, on the other hand, like I was saying, if Giannis has the best 7-game series of his career, I think there's a very good chance they can win the series. I mean, are they going to be able to stop Giannis in the paint? They don't have a big guy. I mean, their best defensive players, at least in the paint, is probably Durant. It's probably Durant, and we'll see how much energy Durant puts into the offense. It's going to be interesting to see Steve Nash's game plan and Mike D'Antoni's game plan. Are they going to want to just play them and do them regardless, or are they going to want to try to legitimately change the way they play the game of basketball against this team? I think they will win the series if the coaching decides we can't just play the way we've played. We need to, Durant, you gotta step off the gas offensively. We've got to let Durant and Kyrie do most of the work. You can be there to, spot up, shoot, make your plays when we need it. But you need to put 95% of your energy to stopping Giannis. If you can stop Giannis, get him to the free throw line where he's not great, make him shoot jump shots. I think you're looking great in the series. But if Giannis is able to go for 35 plus a night, if you can go for 40 a night, 35 plus a night, that's going to be tough because he's pretty much always efficient. So if he's putting up 35 points a game, it's probably efficiently. I'm going to go with the Bucks. Maybe it's more just my gut feeling. Maybe it's more what I want to happen. I'll go with the Bucks in 7. It's going to be close. I think we'll have some games that are blowouts. So we'll have some close games as well. The games where there needs to be closing, that's going to be tough for Milwaukee. So Milwaukee should try to keep, double-digit point leads throughout the game, obviously. But, they're just not nearly as good of a closing team as the Nets. So, but yeah, I'm going to go with the Bucks. It's going to be a close series. You could legitimately argue whichever team wins the series wins the finals because in the West, is there a team as talented as either of these 2 teams? No. In the East, all there is the Sixers, and Embiid could be basically 50% the rest of the playoffs, and I wouldn't be too shocked. These could be the 2 best teams left in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I think whoever wins this series, especially with the Lakers out too, I think they probably will win the finals. I like both these teams better than the Sixers, even with the healthy Embiid. So, yeah, I think the winner of this series will win the finals. Obviously, I have the Nets, and I think Harden will honestly be the best player in this series. I just don't see anyone who can guard Harden. I know he's had a lot of playoff struggles, but that was on a team when it was basically just him in that type of offense where it's ISO and he's driving and lobbing, driving and doing a floater, getting fouled or kicking out for three. That's just not this offense with this team. So I think Harden will be the best player in the series. I think Durant will he'll still be really good offensively. I mean, he's Durant. He's still going to give you an easy 25 to 30 points, just, and you won't even really notice. But I think he will lock in a little bit more defensively. I think they'll definitely, throw some type of defensive scheme at Giannis, whether it's just Durant, whether it's maybe even Blake Griffin. I don't think Jeff Green's playing in the series, but if he was, Jeff Green could definitely be a candidate to guard Giannis. Again, no one's going to stop Giannis. You just need someone to just deter him away, just limit him, frustrate him. Because again, his game is just driving down to the basket. So as long as they can somewhat do that and at least frustrate Giannis a little bit and force him to shoot those outside shots, like you were saying, I think the Nets have a really good chance in the series. And the injury to Dante DiVincenzo, even though people may not think it matters that much, I think it does matter a little bit because they have Pat Connaughton on their bench who's like him, but I think DiVincenzo is a way better player than Connaughton. He's a better three-point shooter. He's a good rebounder, which is always what you need anyways. And he's a good defensive player. And he's someone you could at least throw on Harden. Again, he's not going to stop him, but you could at least throw him on them. So him not being there, he's out for the rest of the playoffs with a foot injury. So I think that is somewhat of a big, I think it hurts the Bucks a little bit. And I don't think people aren't really talking about that much. And I think they will talk about that as the series goes on and that, they're definitely missing DiVincenzo on that defensive end. But even still, I have the Nets, you have the Bucks. I guess, do you have any? I guess who would be if Giannis isn't the best player in the Bucks? Or I guess, who has to step up on the Bucks in order for them to win this series? Who's the next best player on the Bucks?
Well, the immediate answer is definitely, it's Drew Holiday, but I think that's kind of a boring pick. Um, I mean, Drew Holiday is going to have to play Defensive Player of the Year quality defense, and that's only 1/3 of the players you need to really limit. But I don't know exactly who you put Holiday on. It's probably Harden. I just think he's the best guard on that team. Even if you think Kyrie's great, best handles of all time, if you want to say that, Harden's the second best player on that. He's the best guard on the Nets. I'll just say that. You need to limit him. I mean, if he's a point guard, then he's probably the second best point guard in the league or first best point guard in the league when he was. He's a great playmaker. He's obviously a great scorer. Holiday needs to shut him down, and Harden needs to have those playoff struggles that he's had in the past. That needs to happen for the Bucks to win this series. It really does. Other than Holiday, though, I'm not sure who I would look for to step up. If Giannis can go for 38, 37 a night and Holiday can play Defensive Player of the Year quality basketball, I think they'll be looking pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Holiday. I was actually gonna say I think Holiday should guard Kyrie. I guess you can put him on Harden, but I think he works better on Kyrie. But I guess you'll see as the games go on. But obviously Holiday's going to step up. But I was thinking Middleton, honestly. I think he has to have a big series because he seems like he's always going to give you 20. He's always going to be efficient from the field. Obviously, he can really shoot the three, and he's really good from the free throw line. But I think he has to be a lot more aggressive this series. They don't. I mean, I don't exactly know who's going to guard Middleton, so I think that definitely is in the advantage of the Bucks. And if he is just more aggressive and hitting down and knocking down his shots, I think you can easily get 25 points from him, and he could be very impactful in this series. And a guy where you'd expect him to put up numbers, but not exactly have a big impact on the game. If his impact is bigger, I think they definitely have a better shot at winning this series. So I think Holiday defensively is to play probably the best defense he's played in his career. And Middleton offensively is going to play some of the best offense he's played in his career. So it's a lot to ask. I think it's just a lot to ask for the Bucks in order to win this series, and that's kind of why I like the Nets because I think those three guys I'm expecting them to do what they do, and if they do better, they're somewhat expected to do that because they are three top, 20 players in the NBA, maybe top 15 players in the NBA. So I think it's just more to ask for on the Bucks side than the Nets side. So that's why I like the Nets better in this series.
Yeah, I mean, Middleton will definitely have to step up. I think he'll have to be, yeah, he's gonna have to be efficient. He's gonna have to shoot the ball well. He's not going to be a top four player in the series, I don't think, but he's going to have to be a guy that when we look back at the series, we're going to have to say, you know what? He probably had a better series than one of the Nets' big three. If
Yeah.
he's the legitimate fifth best player just in this particular series, obviously overall he is, if not sixth, but you know, he has to play like a top four guy in the series for them to probably have a legitimate chance to win. I think there's a chance it happens. There's also a chance that he's kind of almost like not necessarily like an Andrew Wiggins type of guy, but just a guy that just puts up stats that when you look back, you don't even remember him scoring 20, 25 points. You just remember you don't remember him at all. He can't be that guy. He needs
Yeah.
to make plays when it matters. He probably needs to win a game and down the stretch. He needs to be a better closer than whoever the Nets closer is that game, whether it be Harden, Durant, or Kyrie. He probably needs to outduel one of them in the last 5 minutes of a game. It's possible because it's 5 minutes of an NBA game. Anything can happen. Um, but yeah, I would agree. I think Middleton needs to step up. Holiday needs to step up. I think Forbes probably needs to shoot really well, like he has been from three. I think Holiday again needs to create plays. He needs to assist the ball well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens in that series. First game is Saturday night. Again, you have Bucks, I have Nets. So we'll see what happens. You had Bucks in 6 or 7.
I'm gonna go Bucks in seven. I'm gonna go Bucks in
7.
seven.
Okay, so I had Nets in 7. So again, basically an even series. And I think it will be an even series, unless injuries happen. Assuming no injuries, I think it will definitely go 7 games. But again, first game of that series Saturday night, and that's all the second round matchups. But one last thing that we obviously are going to have to talk about is the Boston Celtics. So it was Wednesday morning. It was around like 9 o'clock, maybe even like 8:30, honestly. And the news came down that Danny Ainge is going to at least retire from being the head ops of basketball operations for the Celtics. I don't know if it was actually retiring just from from doing front office roles in any for any team in the league. I don't think it was that. I think it was just for the Celtics. And that Brad Stevens was going to go from head coach to Danny Ainge's position in the Celtics front office, which, like I said, was head basketball ops for the Celtics. So a huge shakeup for them. We thought something was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to be that. I definitely thought Ainge was going to resign. Definitely wasn't going to be fired, but resign on his own terms. Definitely didn't see Stevens going to be in that same position. I thought he would still be the head coach. They'd make trades. They'd do something with the roster in the offseason, but definitely did not expect this. Obviously, you being the Celtics fan, what are your thoughts? I know you did make a TikTok about it, but what are your thoughts, at least in full now, about the situation as there's been a couple days now to think about it?
First, look at the description. Feel free to check out everything. Just quick plug. TikTok. I made a TikTok. If you want to get, immediate updates on stuff like that, check it out. My first reaction was just shock. I was so surprised. I thought Ainge was probably gone. I don't know if he was legitimately, I don't know if he legitimately stepped down or if the team was like, hey, you should probably step down before we fire you type of deal. I think that's probably more what it was. He's been the GM for a while and he's only had one title and he probably should have more with the favorable trades he's been able to just get gifted to him, like the Nets trade. He should probably have more.
Yeah.
This team's kind of been on the decline the past couple of years. The moves in theory were great and I was in love with them, but they didn't work out. The biggest thing though to me is Stevens not being the head coach of the Celtics anymore. Like that's what shocked me. I think that's what shocked a lot of people. It's
Yeah.
insane just to think Stevens was getting offers as what was a 7-year 70 million or 10-year 70 million offer from Indiana to be the head coach of their university over there. He turned that down. I assumed he was just going to be the head coach of the Celtics for the next 30, 20 years or whatever it happens to be, because he's a guy that everybody looked at as a top 7, 8 coach in the league, if not higher at times. Um, but I guess he head coaching warmed down. We look at why did that happen? Why is he worn down from coaching? My initial reactions is it's egos. It's stuff in the NBA that wasn't there in college. It's Kyrie's ego. It's Gordon Hayward being a different type of person than he probably was in Butler. It's Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, the inmate fighting. I think that would tire me out as well as a head coach. Something he didn't have to deal with in college, and something that is probably not even probably, it is definitely more important in the NBA to be able to manage talent than it is to actually have the X's and O skills. And I think Stevens has really good X's and O's. I think he's a great guy off the inbound. I think he's a great X's and O's guy, great on matchups. But if you can't manage everything and pull the strings and make it work, and then the odds are you're not a winning coach in the NBA. What was Tyronn Lue able to do great in 2016? He was able to make it all gel, make it all work. Was he the best coach, off of an inbound? Was he the best coach with 3 seconds left of a quarter? You're inbounding the ball? No, he definitely wasn't. He's not a pop. He's not a system guy. He's not the system. But what Tyronn Lue was able to do was make Kyrie and LeBron work. And, I think that's just really tough to do. He was able to do it. Stevens wouldn't have been able to. He wasn't able to make the Celtics team work with, Kyrie, Gordon, Horford, Tatum, Brown, Smart. If you had a coach that was able to do that, I think that team will probably still be together. Now, it was unfortunate with the Hayward injury. That kind of that was the first domino that kind of made everything fall into place with that. But yeah, Stevens no longer the coach of the Celtics is just, I can't even think about it. It's I don't know why. It's just weird to think that he could go from the coach to the Danny Ainge head of basketball operations role, and now he's looking for a head coach to replace him. That's just so weird, and he's so young. I just didn't think that was going to happen. Do I think Stevens will be better than Ainge? Potentially. I think he's to put this into baseball terms, he reminds me of like a Heinblum, like a guy who's able to do a lot with a little. If it's anything like head coaching in Butler, that's clearly what he was good at, was doing a lot with a little bit. We'll see what happens. He needs to be more lenient on trades. He needs to be able to pull the trigger more than Danny Ainge was. At least that's that in my opinion. Now, I don't know the deals Danny Ainge was offered the past few years, but he basically didn't do much other than, like the Kyrie trade. But since then, he just didn't do much. Let Hayward slip for nothing when they could have had Miles Turner, who would be so much better than whatever you have right now, and your mix of Thompson and you had basically traded White Tice for a lottery ticket for a good big man and Wagner, and you cut him a few days later. So yeah, I think Ainge should be good. I think he's going to be a good role player acquisitioner guy. I think you'll be able to find the Jay Crowders of the world and those guys, you'll be able to get them from the draft. But this team needs another big piece. I hope Stevens can get that, and I hope they can find a good head coach. I don't know exactly who we're looking for. I really don't. I haven't looked into too much who we want to grab. So it'll be interesting to see from there, but I'd expect it to be a guy that Stevens knows well, clearly. I don't know who he knows from the college world well. I don't want it to be your run of the mill. I don't want like a David Fizdale. I don't want a Jason Kidd. I don't want a guy like that. I don't want a Steve Nash type of guy. I don't want D'Antoni, if that's something anybody would ever think of. I don't want somebody like that. I want somebody that I probably don't know. A guy probably maybe from college. It's not going to be Coach K. That's not going to happen. I know he's going to step down after the 2021-2022 season. It's not going to be Coach K. It's going to be interesting to see who it is. The Celtics team has so many question marks. They need to be a top 4 seed next year. I really think they need to be. They should be a top 4 seed. I think on paper, with Tatum and Brown, they're a top 4 team. I do, in the East.
Yeah, I mean, they can really only be the 4 seed next year, honestly, because you're going to have those top 3 teams in the East, no matter what. So for them to be a top 4 seed, they're going to have to compete with the Hawks, maybe possibly the Knicks if they get someone. Obviously, some other teams could jump up there too, but just there was the extension of Stevens right before the bubble last year, and I think most people just thought, that's just why would you not extend him? Obviously, because you're going to be your coach for multiple years coming, but I think that more so was actually for this role, honestly, that they're extending him to just be with the Celtics longer, so he could be move into a front office role because I think there were some reports saying that he was kind of sick of coaching before the bubble started, and then obviously after the bubble with everything that they went through. So yeah, and I think in the locker room, his voice, I don't know if it's his fault or the players' fault, but his voice clearly just wasn't having the same impact that it was having in 2013, 2014, 2015, when he was first becoming the coach. And like the Celtics were kind of going through those bad years, and then they got better and better. And Stevens was obviously the driving force of that. So, who knows if it was because of that or what it was because of, but he was clearly just sick of coaching and didn't feel like doing that anymore. So obviously when you're, the head of basketball ops, you're not traveling everywhere, you're not studying film all the time. You have a lot more time to yourself. But he's definitely gonna have to be like Ainge was. I mean, Ainge was pretty aggressive at trades. I know, lately he wasn't, but he's been the GM or the head of basketball ops since 2003. He made those trades for Kevin Garnett. He made those trades for those teams in the late 2000s. And he made, obviously he fleeced a lot of teams with those draft picks. You could say those draft picks didn't work out, but he did make those trades to get them and made, just amazing trades looking back on them. Obviously, again, the results didn't
Well,
work out, but I mean, you can't say they were bad trades though. They just didn't work
no,
out the way you wanted them to.
they weren't bad trades. I just think Ainge was reluctant to make trades that he knew he might not win. Like, when you look at those
Yeah,
2008
yeah.
trades, I mean, that was you were gifted a team, a championship winning team for being able to get Garnett and Allen. You really build a big three off the bat. I just don't think any GM would make those series of trades and acquisitions to get that team going. You didn't have to give up too much off. You had to give up like a Jeff Green type, an Al Jefferson type, but you didn't really have to give up too much. That Nets trade was obvious. I mean, you were given a haul for. I mean, I don't know. You would say Garnett and Pierce were probably low 80 overall 2Ks players at that time. If you had to give them an overall, they were probably that at the age of 35 and all that. I don't think that was, I think that was easy. Trading for Kyrie, another one, you take that 10 times out of 10, and it just happened to be probably the 25% chance that it didn't work out. But I think 75% in a simulation that works out. I think Hayward doesn't have that injury 99.9% of the time. I think it happens to work out most of the time. It just happened to not this time. But again, there were probably trade offers along that road that he's like, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. And he doesn't because he's reluctant. And that's the difference between that team still being together right now and competing for finals, like, and not. Because the reality is, if that team worked out, you would have a fringe top 10 player in Kyrie, a fringe top 10 player in Tatum, a fringe probably top 30 player in Brown. You probably don't have Horford, but you probably maybe either traded him for something. You have stuff. Probably have Hayward. That's a team that's probably winning, competing, if not winning the finals. And you lost all that, and you're just stuck with Tatum and Brown now, which is still a good problem to have. But I think Ainge kind of choked it away, and I just we'll see what happens. I mean, do you have any coach candidates you're in love with for the Celtics? Probably not. I mean, it's just who knows, but
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start, I guess. But I think I did see something that they were the early candidates were. Again, this is just candidates, and it's even just reports, so who even knows if it's true. But they were saying, Jason Kidd, Lloyd Pierce, possibly. Again, I don't think those would be good hires at all, but they were just early candidates that were going out there. I don't expect it to be someone from college, honestly. I think this is a team that you need an experienced head coach to come in and coach someone who maybe isn't the best with their X's and O's like Stevens was, but someone who can really work a locker room, which is clearly their biggest problem. And I know they'll probably get rid of some of the pieces that made that locker room so insufferable the last couple of years, and try to clean up some of those voices that are in there. But you still, that's what an NBA coach needs nowadays. I mean, you saw with the Pacers, like they get rid of McMillan because he wasn't doing it in the playoffs, even though you knew he was a good coach. So they hire, Nate Bjorkensen, but he was really good on X's and O's, but he was terrible in the locker room, and he may even get fired after one season. So you need someone who's good in the locker room. That's why Ty Lue gets jobs. That's why Steve Nash got a job, because they wanted him, so they knew he could work well with players. So I don't exactly know who that'd be. I guess you have to look through the ranks, but whoever they do find, he has to be the right coach, because this is, it's not even a window because you're not that type of team yet, but this is your technically window because you have two players in Tatum and Brown who are obviously Tatum could be top 10, possibility, and then Brown is top, 20, top 25 possibility guys. So it's a team where you have the chance to be a finals winning team, but you just need the right coach. You need the right mix of players, and that may take a couple years, may take 1 or 2 years, may even take just this off season. But you need the head coach to be right. And Stevens has it's a big opportunity for him, and he has to get it right. If he misses on this, I mean, obviously it's not like he's going to get fired, but if he misses on this, that's another 2 3 years where then you have to start over again. So a lot is riding on this head coach. A lot is riding on the players that they get. Obviously, Kemba, you can't trade him. I mean, there's just no team's going to take him. So you're kind of stuck with him and his bad knees, and he's definitely not even close to the same player he was just 2 years ago. So they have a lot of questions on their team.
Now, I'm curious to hear the reasoning on why, if you ask Stevens what he has to say about why he doesn't want to head coach anymore, because obviously to take this job, you had to have not wanted to head coach, at least in my mind. I don't think it's like a no-brainer type of thing. I think it's if you want to stop head coaching, you take it. If not, then you don't. Yeah, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought, but egos. Stevens doesn't like dealing with all the egos. And is that going to change being the head of basketball ops? Probably not. I mean, you're still going to have to deal. He's his own agent. You're going to be talking to agents 24/7 pretty much. You have to deal with players' egos when it comes to, what the money they want, etc. I don't think Stevens is going to personally love this job either if he doesn't love
But
what he
maybe
was
he
basically able to avoid in college.
but maybe he likes that better than in a locker room where, if the coach is telling you stuff and he's the voice in that locker room and nobody's listening. I think that is different than being the GM and having to listen to agents or what players want. I think it is somewhat different, and obviously you're not experiencing that on a day-to-day basis, especially when you're in close with these guys in relationships like that. I think it's a little bit different, and maybe it's not. Maybe he'll see after this once, after 1 year, it's just not even close to being different, and it pretty much is the same. It's just that you're not traveling with the team every day, you're not studying film, you're not drawing up plays and everything like that. So maybe he does realize it's kind of the same thing, but again, he's never done this before. I mean, you could say college, he recruits people and stuff, but it's not. It's somewhat the same, but obviously not really the same. He has to figure out cap and salary, which he's gonna have to learn unless he already does know somewhat about it. Maybe he's been learning it the last couple of years, but he's gonna have to figure all that out. How to make stuff work. They obviously still have that trade exception from the Gordon Hayward, so we'll see how they probably use that if they try. How they will use that, but again, they have a lot of questions going into next year, so we'll see what happens. And again, we'll talk about it in the offseason. When the offseason does come for the whole NBA, it'll be a full offseason. We'll see about free agency, trades, drafts, everything. So it'll be a lot to talk about for a lot of teams that in the NBA, especially the Celtics. So
If for some reason you made me make a bold prediction about the Celtic situation, my off the top of my head, my bold prediction would be in the next 5 years, Stevens is not the head of basketball operations. And in fact, he's probably back in college head coaching somewhere, whether it be in Indiana, whether maybe it be at Duke in a year, whether it
well,
be
they already hired someone, but yeah.
whether it be UNC at some point, whether it be, I don't know. I don't know where it would be, but I think that's my bold take.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I think he could be coaching in the NBA again, possibly, or in college. I definitely would not be surprised in the next 5 years, unless he's a really good at doing this. Which I mean, there's definitely a possibility, but I definitely would not be surprised after a couple of years. I think they said he wanted to spend more time with his family and everything. So you spend more time with the family, but then you miss what you do. What you've been doing the last 20 years. In college and the NBA. So I definitely would not be surprised if he goes back to a head coaching position, whether it's in the NBA or in college.
To my narrative, I would be surprised if he went back to the NBA. I think he just doesn't like the NBA. I think he's more of he wants to be the system. He wants to be a Belichick type of coach, a Popovich type of coach, and he doesn't want to have to deal with like things in his mind, he probably can't control, like player ego, stuff like that. He doesn't want to have to deal with that aspect of basketball. He wants to deal with, you know, the recruiting is, hey, like, you're not a top five recruit in the nation. You come to my system, you shine in March Madness. We make national championship runs, maybe even win them. and you go from a guy who was probably going to be drafted in the late second round or something to a guy who spends 3 years at Butler or whatever college and gets, like a Gordon Hayward type. I think he prefers that over, coaching a guy like a Tatum, a Kyrie, a Brown, just these super privileged guys who have everything handed to them and they kind of think the system is them when in reality maybe it isn't. But yeah, I mean that's yeah. But I think that's pretty much it, unless you have anything else to.
No, I mean that's what's been going on in the NBA. And we'll see about tonight. If the Mavs do win, then it'll be them versus the Jazz. If not, if Game 7 will be on Sunday, between the Clippers and the Mavs, and then whoever wins that obviously will still play the Jazz. So some good second round matchups. Obviously, Nets Bucks are the headline of that second round matchups, but the Lakers losing, Clippers potential losing. So both LA teams could be out for the second round, which I don't think anyone could have expected. So just a lot going on in the NBA and the playoffs. And even without LeBron, I think it will be a very exciting playoffs.
I agree. I think parity in the NBA is great, and we kind of haven't really had that too often in the past, basically 7 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to get back. I'm still not even like used to it. Like I'm still used to like why watch NBA games theoretically because there's no like you already know who's winning. And this is a year where we don't really know. Although at the end of the year, my words might be completely different because the Nets win, and I'm like, oh, I don't want the Nets to win. I knew this was going to happen, but we'll see. I'm excited for it. In the future, we're probably going to get more into NFL as the offseason kind of starts to pick up. I think Rodgers is a story that's super interesting. We just don't have the time for it necessarily today. OTAs, first look at rookies, stuff like that. We will see. MLB, of course, mid-season, we're kind of starting to, things are starting to pick up. June baseball, so we'll see that. We'll probably look back at our predictions early in the year. I know we did an over-under wins prediction. I'm sure we got a lot right there and a lot wrong. Probably more a lot wrong than a lot right. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll look at MVP candidates there. I'm excited. There's a lot to get back to. So yeah, feel free to check everything out in the description. Brandon, any quick comments, football or baseball?
No, I'll say no, but Dak, I will say Dak is, I think he's full go in OTAs. I mean, I've seen videos of it, so he looks good to go, and I am excited for the NFL season. And I want it to be August or September so we can get really into the NFL, but we still have a couple months for that. But Cowboys, I am very excited for this Cowboys season though.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the NFL season. Lots of good narratives. Lots of good narratives. This is the first season or one of the first seasons where we're seeing a lot of teams that have been perennially bad start to become perennially good.
Yeah.
Bucks, obviously, Bills, lots of teams. And we're going to see a lot of shakeup. Teams that are perennially Super Bowl contenders and winners, Patriots, not nearly as good as they have been. It's going to be an interesting season. We'll see what happens with Watson and the Texans. Trevor Lawrence. I want to start doing some more reactions as well that we might post here. We might post clips, but I'm kind of working on that. I want to do some more reactions, whether it be to, first things first clips or, undisputed or, just random stuff. Kind of get some more easily consumable 10, 15-minute clips. That might go on the clips channel. We'll see, but that's pretty much it. I guess I will do one thing. I want to shout out my mom because she said she's watched every episode. So we're going to see if that's true. Mom, if you're actually at the end of this episode, feel free to comment to verify that. But yeah, I will shout out my mom because she is one of our few supporters. I mean, I love all of them, but we're no Colin Coward here. We're no Bill Simmons or whatever. So
yeah.
Yeah, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back sometime, probably at the latest Tuesday. So yeah.